at this time, I'll give it over to Kelly and Cindy. Thank you.
Let me trade you. And now you don't have to hold on to anything. We'll make it easy for you.
It truly is all about Braston at that point, isn't it? Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Kelly Klepper with Kimley Horn. It's always a pleasure. And also, Ms. Stevens, thank you very much for your service. Coming from a military family, I can definitely appreciate that quite a bit. So thank you.
Got these,
There's several.
these two too, yeah. Commissioner Smith and Godwin.
So since I just made a faux pas right there, we're just going to go straight to the presentation. No, I was going to say I've got my dad was Navy, my son is flying Blackhawks, and my nephew's flying Apaches. So,
Awesome. Thank them for their service.
so it's always a fun thing. So with me tonight, of course, is Ms. Cynthia Schwarzkopf, who is our Deputy Project Manager, local liaison, and an incredible partner. I know she's well known to this group as well. But we're here tonight to kind of give you a quick overview, as Braston said, of what we've been working on to this point, what we're going to be doing over the next little bit, and especially for Commissioner Smith's benefit, kind of outlining a couple of things that we're doing as part of Phase 1 to, like I say, kind of take a look at a couple of things as it relates to what can we be doing as part of a short-term approach on certain things, but also kind of give you the long-term feel as well. So we're not going to dive too deep into the code, of course, tonight, but just kind of the 3 Ps that Cindy and I love to kind of think about. The code is in the Unified Development Ordinance is about 3 things. It's about the people, about the place, and about the project. You know, the people are the folks that we have with us on our team, and Cindy and I are supported by a number of folks behind the scenes, from land use planners to engineers to landscape architects, you name it. And then more importantly, it's folks like Braston and Cameron and that group that, you know, truly are a pleasure to work with, because 1, they get it, 2, there's a passion for what they're doing and why. The place, Johnston County. You know, this is the forefront of a lot of what's going on. You've got a lot of great things happening, from your land use plan to taking that next step. And then the project, there again, this code, this Unified Development Update, transforming what you had from a vision into reality and giving Braston and, more importantly, the county the tools to be able to kind of guide that growth and development and put it into something that meets the county's expectations, pure and simple. So there again, we've kind of broken this up into 2 phases. There's an initial Phase 1 that we're going to talk a little bit more in depth tonight, and then kind of give you a preview into Phase 2. So Phase 1 aspects, you know, we're starting to approach and tackle the plan development approach, the PUDs or the PUDs. Looking at outlining and creating a process for the subdivision development standards. Also starting to initiate, and Cindy's going to talk about this and has a nice graphic to kind of help illustrate this, the conservation subdivisions. And, you know, looking at, and Cindy's got an incredible stat that came from North Carolina APA about the loss of farm and ag land. And this is even more prevalent in the reason why we're proposing or going to be looking at some sort of conservation subdivision and preserving those assets that we call Johnston County. And then, of course, looking at a couple of districts. Phase 2 is going to be taking the new districts, getting those adopted, and creating a series of design and development standards. And I'm going to give you a quick teaser tonight on some of these as we're moving forward. Oops. And then, of course, the ever-popular North Carolina General Statutes and Standards as far as 160D is concerned, making sure that we're staying consistent with the state laws. So when we look at a UDO, it's not only about the content, it's about the context. The code is the code is the code, but how do we apply it to Johnston County? What we apply or propose, and I'm just going to say generally, you know, on the east side of the county is not going to be the same standards that we can look at on the west side of the county. There's a whole different kind of approach and feel, and so the realistic thing is you're probably going to end up with 2 sections or almost 2 sets of codes because, you know, where you have really true ag preservation versus where you have your infrastructure and where you're seeing some of the more of the growth. So making sure that we're addressing those appropriately. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. The things that you see here are going to be part of tonight's discussion, but I'm going to have Cindy kind of walk through the subdivision standards as well as the PUDs and also the conservation standards. And I'm going to come back and talk about the signage, some graphics, and some other components.
Thank you, Kelly. Again, happy to be here this evening. Just want to kind of start talking through a little bit about what we've been doing. You know, some of the first components that we're working on is really kind of doing a deep dive into your subdivision section of the ordinance and kind of figuring out what works, what might need some changes, spent a lot of time talking with Braston and staff about some of the things that they think work, some of the things that don't work. And so we've been coming together, doing some peer research and working with our team to come up with some options for you. And one of the key things, too, is making sure that this new UDO, when it's complete, lives up to what was expected as part of your recent comp plan. You know, we've heard that you really want to have a more predictable process. You want to discourage intense residential development in places where it shouldn't be. Let's think about conservation subdivisions. Let's think about ways that we can honor the agrarian heritage of Johnston County and protect that farmland. How do we improve your design standards? How do we get more from the development community to make sure that Johnston County keeps growing and thriving? Thinking about tree canopy, thinking about tree surveys, all of these things that are currently kind of silent in your UDO, but how do we move that forward? We've heard that there's a thought about wanting to change the process of how you handle subdivisions, and we've come up with an idea for that for you. Flexibility is key, too. Let's come up with a process that gets you to the end goal, but there's not always one way to get things done. Let's give developers and the development community additional options to make things happen in the county. And then we also want to make sure that we're really doing lots of things that makes it a lot easier for staff to understand, for you all to implement, and the developers to understand. You know, pictures do a whole lot more than words. Let's make this a much more graphic intensive. Let's do process flow charts. Let's make sure we have great definitions so that it makes it a whole lot easier to understand and implement. A few of the other things that we've looked at from doing a deep dive into your ordinance and as well as doing some peer research is that we really want to make some big changes to your Article 3. We want to move some of the standards out and really think about putting a whole new article together that is just design and development standards. That's really a common practice among peer communities. It makes it a whole lot easier to implement the ordinance when you have all the standards and procedures in one place. Everybody knows where to go. Right now, things are in different sections of the UDO, and it's a little hard to understand. Also, in that same vein, moving development agreements from Article 3, putting that into another section. Definition section right now, there's a lot of definitions embedded throughout the ordinance. We'd like to move all of them to one individual section of the ordinance. And, you know, throughout the ordinance, we can link them, we can highlight them so that people know that that is a word that is defined, and you can go to that section to understand what the definition is. And then also really updating the minor and major subdivisions, talking through how many lots do you think should be a minor subdivision? How many lots do you think triggers a major subdivision? And what's your plat process? So again, I kind of went through quickly how the different divisions would be, but the chart on the right really is just kind of a first effort to kind of show you what we're thinking about. You know, for minor subdivisions and the major subdivisions, we are proposing moving that from being a planning board decision to having it be an administrative decision. We'd like to implement a TRC review or technical review committee approach in Johnston County where applicants will come in. They can do an optional pre-application conference if they would like with Braston and staff. They'll submit their application, then the application will go through review through this TRC committee, and it'll be representatives from majority of the departments within the county all weighing in, looking at the subdivision, weighing it on its merits compared to the UDO. If they believe that it meets all the requirements, they let the planning director know, planning director can approve it, and they can move into plat approval. If the application is deemed deficient, then it kind of goes back through that loop again. Goes back in, the applicant has said, okay, these are the things that aren't right, this doesn't meet the code, you need to go back and try again. And then it goes back to TRC review for approval. So these are the types of processes that we want to be working with you and staff to improve the current process, make things go a little bit faster for some of these subdivision processes. And then again, moving into the major subdivision, one of the main changes in this is that it's not an optional, it becomes a mandatory pre-application conference. We really believe that the major subdivisions, you know, things are getting much more complicated, and we need to have a little bit more time for review. So we want the developers and the development community to come schedule time with staff, do the pre-application conference, submit the application, and go back through. Again, it's still an administratively approved function, but it does have the TRC review. But it has a few more layers of requirements, very detailed applications, so that they make sure that we're hitting everything related to pre-application conference, thinking about a TIA, looking to see what the appropriate thresholds are for whether TIAs are needed. and then going all the way through what it takes to, once you're approved, how long you would have for preliminary plat approval expirations, and then if you need to appeal things, what's the appropriate appeal process going through. And we'll do something similar also when it comes to the final plat approval. So again, lots and lots of graphics, lots and lots of flow charts, lots of detailed expectations of what it would take to have an application approved and then get to a plat within Johnston County. And then proposed structure, lots of ideas here for making sure that we're really getting the most of what we can out of development opportunities in Johnston County. All of these will have graphics to go with them, better definitions. We want to introduce the idea of streetscape buffers, trying to decide the best places within the county to include streetscape, trees planted, the width, all of that is, still to be determined, things that we'll work out with staff and you and the community. We need to be talking about access and circulation and connectivity. Where is it appropriate to seek connectivity? Where is it appropriate to have circulation patterns? How much access do we need? We need to be cognizant that we don't want our neighborhoods to be racetracks, but we also don't want to keep having multiple driveways onto roads. So having those conversations, what are the thresholds for that? And then sidewalks, also thinking about sidewalk requirements throughout the county. Obviously, there's going to be some places in the county where sidewalks probably aren't required or aren't needed. But where are those instances where we should have them perhaps on one side of the street? And where are those instances where we do need them on two sides of the street so that we can create those connected communities where people want to be out walking? So these are all things that we'll be working through over the next couple months. And then one of the things that we've also heard that is really important is the idea of introducing a conservation subdivision. And as Kelly said, I was at a conference last week for the North Carolina Planning Association, and they brought up a very interesting tidbit. And they said that between 2016 and 2040 in Johnston County, it's anticipated that nearly 53,000 acres of farmland could be lost in that time period without changes to the current UDO, because based on the low-density residential pattern that's happening right now. So with the changes in the UDO and working with you all, we can come up with options for conservation subdivision where we're still able to bring the growth and development to Johnston County, but we're having it clustered. We're having it designed in a way that we're still providing lots of acreage for farmland and for agricultural heritage, and we're able to bring the neighborhoods in. So this is something that a lot of the peer communities are doing. You see it right now. Chatham County just did it. Pitt County just did it. Wake County is getting ready to do it. So all your peers are doing this. Everyone is recognizing that farmland is being taken away in record amounts, and so everyone is now starting to look to find out ways to help that and reduce that amount. So we will be working on that with you over the next couple months. And then also PUD standards, plan unit developments, looking for ways to kind of give developers an idea of people that are looking to do larger tracts of land, larger developments. How can you get a customized development within what you have now? You don't really have strong PUD regulations. Now we would be able to allow someone that wants to come in doing a sizable development and wants to do a mixture. If they want to do a mixed-use development, let's have them come in and really talk about creating customized, crafted standards that go a little bit above and beyond what the ordinance sets to be able to have a higher quality development and allow things that are a little out of the norm. So this is one of these things that we'll also be working with you, and this page exactly shows an example of what it could be within the document. A graphic, really easy to understand, talks about variety of housing units that would be allowed, cross sections, the relationship to the street, talks about setbacks and potential density, height, everything in one standard page so that it's very easy to understand, very easy to implement, and really, really helps provide high-crafted, high-design development for the county. So with that, I'll stop. But if you have any questions related to subdivisions or PUD or the process we've gone through, I'm happy to answer, or we can do this after Kelly works through some of these things.
I did have one quick question.
Yes,
So
sir.
on the minor and major subdivisions, the minor was the planning director.
And Major's also planning director.
Okay, I just
Yes,
want to
sir.
make sure. So when does, what triggers planning board and,
At this point, the only thing that would be going to planning board would, we're getting into rezonings. So planning board would be taken out of, the way we have it written right now, planning board would be taken out of minor and major. Again, that's just a suggestion we're happy to have further conversations with you. But most of the peer communities have minor and major going through administrative review instead of taking it through a quasi-judicial or planning board approval.
but that comes in with all the details that are in there for that.
Yes, sir.
So it's really,
Cut and dry.
developers can really be certain, and the public can be certain of what's
Absolutely.
in one and what's not, so, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
So signage seems pretty mundane, pretty small to some people, but it's probably one of the most controversial, one of the most overlooked items if you're not careful. So one of the things what we did is, we looked at what is the current Johnston County code, and that's the information you see on the left. There again, nothing wrong with that, but we have looked at a number of communities across the state, whether it's Monroe or Stallings or, Louisville, and, working with a number of other communities to come up with a series of standards like you see on the right, whereas let's provide that image. Let's actually give that illustration so when we start talking about what is a wall sign, that's what it is. And then providing a very simple, easy-to-use series of standards that goes with it. When we start looking at signage, there are two landmark cases that came out from the United States Supreme Court. One's called the Reed case. Believe it or not, that was actually almost 10 years old, but it came out of Arizona and it talks about, what can you do and what can you not do as a community with respect to regulating signage. You can regulate how big, where you put it, but can you differentiate between a school or some of the other things or, nonprofits? The Supreme Court said no. State of North Carolina has also said no on a lot of those. Another Supreme Court case was also the city of Austin. So what we're doing is going through the sign code as we speak, one, to take a look at to make sure you're consistent not only with those two cases, but also with what's being prescribed within 160D, because there's also some differentiation between political signs as well. So there again, defining what is the various types of signs, identifying where those signs can be, and then more importantly, how the measurements are going to be undertaken, so it's very clear and easy to understand. Just a general approach to code graphics. This is something that we talked about with Braston and his team early on in the process of making sure that this UDO is full of graphics and illustrations. That way there is a text that goes with it, but then starting to illustrate like you see here in a very simplified manner, like Cindy was saying, with property perimeter buffers of how wide should a buffer be? What should it look like? If they're going to provide a fence, should they be putting the fence on the inside closest to the homes or the outside closest to the road? A lot of codes stay silent to that, and what you'll start seeing is more of the fences being on the outside and all the trees being on the inside to benefit the homeowners. So making sure there again, we've got graphics that illustrate these things. Just like Cindy said, looking at those roadway cross sections, taking those standard engineering drawings and putting it into a context that somebody can relate to from a building or a street tree perspective. And then under the design and development standards, when we start thinking about transparency or how many windows should be along the front of a building or certain things of that nature, what are we talking about and how do we kind of graphically illustrate some of that? The districts. This is something that, again, we talked about with Braston early on, and, when you look at your code, you have to go to two different sections to figure out what's going on for each of the districts from a setbacks and other types of standards. So what you can see on the left was actually a snippet from your current code, which just identifies what are the setbacks, but then you have to go to a different section to figure out what you can do within that. So our approach is, like Cindy was showing, the graphic in the middle that defines the front, side, and rear yards, and then more importantly, putting all of those standards together, so everything from height to setbacks to density, lot sizes, and things of that nature, all within a simple to easy to use table, all within the district itself. There again, trying to consolidate and simplify the approach. Speaking of which, also making sure that the definitions that Braston and his team have to work with are very clear. So giving them clear definitions on what are the characteristics of certain types of uses, whether or not it's professional office, whether or not it's a restaurant, whether or not it's just a single-family home. Providing those kind of characteristics so that he's not having to make just blind interpretations. There again, there's a series of standards that help guide some of that. And then getting into what are some of the accessory uses? What are some of the examples? Use standards. In the cases of things that we've seen before, like with a gas station associated with a convenience store, making sure that there are certain provisions that protect the adjacent residential in that case. So where are we at this point? There are, of course, the additional phase one considerations that our team is currently working on. So creating a couple of mixed-use districts that actually encourage both, a mix of uses, whether it's residential or office or commercial on one piece of property horizontally and or vertically, making sure, again, that, where do those fit the best? Can it be just anywhere in the county? Probably not, so they need to be clearly defined, consistent with your land use plan. Creating a couple of extra residential districts. As bad as I hate to say it, one of the first questions we asked Braston was, where are the rest of these? And he goes, that's it. So it's, you've got almost like Cindy said, it's one or nothing. So we're trying to create some additional flexibility, both for the county, but also for the development community to say, here's what we're wanting to do, and this is where it's going to fit. Making sure that we've got a concise table of uses by district so that you can go through and look at and see exactly what uses are permitted by district. So in essence, what can I do within each of my zoning districts? And then more importantly, things like you see on that bottom right, how we measure. What do those lots look like, whether it's a corner lot, a through lot? How do we measure setbacks? How do we measure building height? How do we measure some of our buffers and standards? But there again, providing that clear, easily defined language that is, somebody can look at that image and go, that's what I mean. And with that, commissioners, like I said, Cindy and I are here to answer any questions. I know Braston was kind enough to provide you all with some baseline information up to this point. Just let you know, we've been working extremely hard and appreciate the fact we've been meeting every other week with Braston and the team to keep this ball moving both on the phase one and the phase two components.
All right, any questions?
I have some comments. I'm not sure they're questions. And I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth because I'm to the point in Johnston County where I really fear for the quality of life going forward. I was sitting with someone the other day and we were around the table and everybody was comfortable. I said, how would it be if we doubled the seating here? How would it be if we tripled it? After a while, it gets really uncomfortable for everybody here, and that's what I'm concerned about. But at the same time, when I look at this structure, I'm concerned about freedom. Freedom. That's my really mantra with government, freedom. What does it matter if somebody has more than 40% of the wall surface in signage? I mean, is that an issue with people? I don't know. A lot of this stuff appears to be like some of the municipalities we hear people talk negatively about. Some of this stuff in here that I've glanced at just at the beginning is good, like concentrate some of the density and leaving open space instead of just, spreading it out. But I am concerned about freedom and the ability of somebody to get from, while I don't want to see a lot of more congestive growth, I don't want it to make it too difficult that people are dealing with us. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
I mean, we could make it difficult so they don't want to come here. I don't think that's the solution. Yeah.
Very, very well said.
Any other comments? And I know this is Commissioner Smith. So I do like the framework that where we are. I know this is kind of high level stuff, but I do like the fact that of putting everything in one place for anybody's ever gone through the process and jumping from here to there, and you got a couple places to it. Is it this one or this one that applies?
And the graphics.
And the visuals, yeah, the graphics. I mean, for me personally, I'd much rather look at a picture than read 1,000 words.
Very good.
But I like where we're headed with this, and appreciate the work that y'all are doing and our staff is putting into this, and look forward to hearing some more updates shortly.
Absolutely. Point taken.
All right, yeah. So
Thank you.
Thank you
all
all.
right, thank you. All right, that brings us to manager reports and comments. Rick, I think you've
Yes,
got
sir.
several people. That
Yes, sir, Chairman Law, board members, thank you for the opportunity. I know sometime back, back in July, we transitioned away from the solid waste decals. And so I think the board had asked for kind of an update on usage at those sites. So if it's okay, I'd like Mr. Brian Beasley, our Director of Solid Waste, to come and give you a brief overview. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening,
Yeah.
Chairman and Board. Just some facts and figures that we put together. We've been monitoring the customer flow for the first 3 months of the sites, which, there's 12 sites throughout the county, 13 if you count the landfill site. The week of July 1st, 2023, I went back a year so you could get a figure from the decal to no decal. We did 10,505 customers that week. Fast forward to July 1st of 2024, with the first day of the decal going away, the numbers were 12,168. So it looks like a large uptick, but if you back up just 1 week prior to that, when we still had the decal existing, we were at 11,876. So the trend was up because of growth of the county anyway. So we went up about 1,600 customers overall from year to year. We monitored it for the first 3 months. We're averaging about 12,970 customers weekly, which is about 1,000 customers up on average for the year, each week. So we thought it might be more, but it's manageable at this point. It's still continuing to trend in that same direction. Last week's numbers were 13,597 customers for each site, or for the sites as a total. Some sites are busier than others. Some have seen more growth than others. The tonnage, as far as what we're hauling, has stayed about the same, maybe even a little less, but we equate that to the economy. Recycling is up, so we're hauling a lot more recycling, but we're having more customers come in with that availability. So,
Any significant problems at any sites as far as citizens are concerned?
no, we haven't had, really any complaints. Minor complaints here and there, but we address those as they arise.
Good, good.
Any other questions? And I can get you any of these facts and send them to you.
Go ahead.
My question is that, has there been any noticeable impact on the amount of trash that otherwise would be in the road ditches that we're seeing by now having the ability to dispose of it without a fee?
I would hope so. That was your goal.
Yeah.
In creating easily accessible trash access to the dumps for everyone. So at least on the areas that we're seeing, we're not getting a lot of calls and complaints about littering like we were. So hopefully it will decrease over time.
Yeah.
I frequent one site repeatedly, and I have noticed different people, new people that haven't been there before. And I remember asking one citizen, wonder where that trash was going before.
Yes. It was
In the
going
ditch
somewhere.
across my house.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I would just say if we could, end of the year, start of next year, if you give us another update on
Sure
kind of
thing.
what you see, but appreciate the work you and your staff are doing on that.
With the rapid growth we're having, it probably is difficult to discern which is the change in just growth numbers as far as freebies.
That's exactly what I
Correct.
was thinking, the change in the, what was the rate before and what's the difference between the rate with no decals. So, that's probably a blend of a number
Yeah.
that
It is.
we'll never know.
Several variables there is hard to
Yeah,
measure.
it is.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
support.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. There are two issues that I wanted to bring to your attention tonight. The first issue relates to Isaiah 117 House, and you may recall you received a presentation about that initiative some time ago, and at your direction and the direction of the DSS board and the director, I spent some time working with Ms. Julie Dixon, who is the North Carolina State Director for Isaiah 117 House, to better understand the proposal that was being made in Johnston County and to see if that would be something that could potentially be beneficial to the citizens in Johnston County. As you may recall, Isaiah 117 House is currently raising awareness and taking steps to open a location in Johnston County that serves as a temporary transitional space for the Department of Social Services employees to serve custodial children awaiting foster care placement in a safe, child-friendly environment. Isaiah 117 House also offers space at its locations for Department of Social Services supervised visitation between children and their families, and they offer amenities such as kitchenettes with snacks and refrigerators and microwaves and living and dining areas with activities, games, toys, bathrooms, those sorts of things. As you know, the mission of Johnston County Department of Social Services is to serve, aid, and protect needy and vulnerable children and adults in ways that strengthen and preserve families. After a review of this proposed initiative, we do believe that this additional resource in Johnston County could be beneficial to the children and families that we serve. The DSS board at their last meeting voted to write a letter of support for this initiative and to support Isaiah 117's house's desire to establish a location in Johnston County. As you may recall, there's no investment that's being requested from Johnston County for this project. It is a self-funded initiative, but nonetheless, I wanted to update you as to where we are. On October the 29th, there is going to be, Isaiah 117 House is hosting an awareness luncheon and a dinner. There are representatives from Johnston County that will be attending that October 29th noon meeting, and I understand that the chairman may be attending the evening session for that event, but that'll be an opportunity for us to learn more about this organization. And so I just wanted to let you know that the DSS board and the director support the initiative to establish a location in Johnston County, and was curious to get feedback from you as to whether or not that was a consensus of this board as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Will this initiative come in under any other purview such as mental health, People's Alliance, that sort of thing?
No, sir, not really. This is more of a respite transitional space for children that are coming into custodial care. But honestly, the thing that Johnston County is the most excited about is the opportunity to have some supervised visitation space in a place that mimics a home, which would be very beneficial to those families in our attempt to strengthen and preserve those families. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do you need just a consensus?
Just a consensus of the board to move forward. And again, before anything really happens with the department, there would have to be a memorandum of understanding and those sorts of things. But it's premature at this point to engage in that portion of the process because the space has not been built at this time. But Isaiah 117 House certainly wanted to know that they were welcome in Johnston County before they made that significant investment.
All right. Is everyone in favor of that letter of support? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. The next thing that I wanted to talk with you about was a technical amendment to the personnel policy. And the purpose of this amendment is to clarify emergency pay when providing mutual aid to the state and other local governments during an emergency. This actually came up as we started deploying assets and resources to Western North Carolina, and in reviewing our policy, it was unclear as to how that should work. And because this is important for FEMA reimbursements if we chose to submit, and it also supports those employees that are selected by the Emergency Services Director for deployment in cases of an emergency. And this technical amendment, all it does is add language that not only reflects when the Johnston County Emergency Operations Center is fully activated, it also allows for Johnston County to provide aid and assistance pursuant to a mutual aid agreement to the state or another local emergency management agency. And it would just clarify how we pay. This technical amendment has been vetted by the county manager, the county finance officer, the county emergency services director, the HR director, and the internal auditor. And
I thought your memo to us explained it very well. Do you need a board action?
Yes,
I was gonna say,
please.
So you need a vote?
I
on
move
Yes.
that we approve
Okay.
the action.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on technical amendment to the personnel policy. Any other discussion?
I had one question.
Yes, sir.
We've got some very conscientious people working for the county. If someone wanted to take it upon themselves to go help out and they took personal leave, that wouldn't apply to this at all?
That is correct. It's only when you are deployed as part of the state emergency operations center and you are assigned for an operation by the emergency services director.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Chester? Okay. That brings us to board reports and comments. Mr. Smith, anything for you tonight?
It's hard to hold the whole half up by yourself.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
Especially on the left side.
All right, Mr. Stevens,
Okay.
Commissioner Stovall,
Good tonight.
Commissioner Godwin. I
Two
can count on
things.
you. I can count on you.
I want to remind everybody about the Green Light Initiative for Veterans. Be sure to display your green light in the window or on the front porch. I think my neighbors are enjoying my green light. My dog gets suspicious of it every time he goes out. The other thing is I wanted to make sure everybody knows about it and is invited to the Veterans event. We've had it every year. There's been some missing years during COVID, but at Triple S High School in the gym on November the 11th, 11 o'clock, that's a couple of weeks away. We're going to have a good speaker, a local businessman who was a combat helicopter pilot in Vietnam will be our speaker. I think it'll be an enjoyable program and a meaningful program as it has in the past.
All right, and I don't piggyback, and I'm going to come with half the information. I know we have an event also on the 12th with a video presentation. Is that the Ag Center, JC? We'll get all the information for the next meeting. Is that where I mess it all up?
Yeah, that's right.
That's
Thanks for
community
reminding me
comments.
about
Okay,
that.
yeah, so make sure that folks are available for that. I did have a couple of things. One is we had a couple of representatives from Johnston County receive the Dogwood Award. I think this week we had 911 Communications for some work that they did in western North Carolina. I think it was in Haywood County. And then also our district attorney, Susan Doyle, also was a recipient of that award. Again, we've already talked about Employee Appreciation Week this week, and again, a big thank you to all our employees for making our jobs so much easier up here. Third thing is we have had typically in February the last few years a strategic planning retreat for this board, and we are looking tentatively right now at February the 20th and 21st of having that at a site to be determined later. And finally, just an update on the replacement for District 3 Commissioner. We have had 4 applications. 1 has been withdrawn, so we're currently at 3. The application deadline is 3 o'clock this Friday. We are planning to review all the applications, and there will be an interview process with the ultimately a decision made on November the 18th, and the swearing in will be on December the 2nd. So that's the schedule that we have planned right now. So that is all that I have. And we do have a need for a closed session, and I do not anticipate there will be any action taking place after that closed session.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move the board go into closed session for the purpose of consulting with an attorney employed by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A3.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of going into closed session for those reasons, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll go into closed session after a second to clear the room.
Hey, Adam.
Thank you.